Good morning. Can you guys hear me? Yeah? I'm going to start this talk by to talk about a little bit this notion that I have. I'm calling this the social train. The social train goes something like this. We go to school, we get good grades so that we can go to good universities, so that we can get good grades, so that we can get a good job, get paid, buy things, buy the house, build the picket fence, buy the car, get married, and live happily ever after. And who has been on this train? Everyone. Who has put their kids on this train? Yes, pretty much everyone. So the problem is this train no longer works, right? We go to school, we learn things that probably going to be obsolete when they get out of school, go to university, same thing. Get a job they probably going to hate, get a salary and buy things that they don't need, get married to someone very likely they're going to get divorced in and live this life that is not quite happily ever after. And I promise that the rest of the talk is a little bit more optimistic than this, but the thing is, the train that we have set up, the train that is fueled by capitalism that we have built isn't working. And so this train have created this kind of modern society that relies on convenience. We are, riding on this train with fast food, fast fashion, fast lives that are all driving towards a very fast death in our planet. So, yeah, I promise it will be a little bit more optimistic after this. And I often ask myself, how is it possible that we manage to leave so many people behind on this train, with so many people not having food security on one spectrum, and then on the other spectrum, we have massive food waste and obesity? What in the equation is broken for us to not being able to manage these problems? So in 1999, Stuart Brand came out with this book called The Clock of the Long Now. And in this book, he mentioned this framework that I use a lot because it gives me a mechanism to understand how the change of pace in different structure in the society. And so in this pace layer, he talked about these different elements, right? In the very bottom, you have nature. And obviously, nature is very slow in change because evolution is very slow, right? And then you move up the layer, you have culture, we talk about traditions, we talk about religion. And those things are very much driven on a lot of the nature that has brought to us. And then you have the governance, you're talking about institutions, political institutions that are protecting our culture, our families, and us as individuals. And moving up the layer, you have the infrastructure that are built, the roads, the streets, and all these shared assets that the government had built. And on top of that, you have the commerce, right, which use the infrastructure to distribute these goods and services. And on top of all this is kind of the ramifications of the commerce that we have built. Now, what he had also talked about is that the layers above give innovation. They give speed, they give iterations and innovation to the society. And the bottommost layers allowed for stability. And together, the whole entire pace layer allow for the resilience of our society today. And that, for me, is very revealing on how we operate. Okay, the problem is that this was written in 1999, right? Our society is no longer driven by these mechanisms. What we're seeing today is that a lot of these layers are being disrupted. We're seeing governance being bumped down because they're becoming more and more obsolete. We're seeing nature being bumped up. Climate change is changing at a speed that have never seen before. We're seeing technologies going off the chart in terms of how they are evolving. So the resilience of the society that we had built up to today is being massively disrupted. And one of the reasons this disruption is happening is because we have, over the last 200 years, single-handedly applied economic across all of these layers. Before that, these layers have their own order and their own logistics. But now, applying economic across, what we have done is that we basically it's commercializing everything and kind of negated all other values that we have. So the question that I am asking is, how are we going to move forward? How can we provide for this growing population without over-consuming our resources. So before we move forward, we need to first understand this concept. As I was looking into the research of how to approach this problem, this topic, this area keeps coming up, which is transaction friction. And this transaction friction is basically tons of money being spent on materials and energies that don't actually give us any value. So what exactly is transaction friction? Right? Transaction friction is the extra cost of a good in addition to the good itself. So we're talking about search costs, we're talking about transportations, storage, packaging, so on and so forth. So you would think, how much is a transaction friction in a purchase item? 10%, 20%, 60%? Wow, good. So in, say, for example, in craft beer, over 50% of the cost is towards transaction friction. In this particular case, we're talking about predominantly distribution and retail, right? In developing country, transaction cost is as high as 80 to 90% because the logistic and information cost there is so highly inefficient, so many middlemen in between the transactions that the cost is super high. Now, transaction friction isn't just costing our consumer in terms of dollars, it's costing companies because of inefficiencies, is costing the environment, the CO2 that is being emitted because, for example, in this particular statistic, 1/3 of the cargo ships are moved emptied. And it's costing consumers not just money, but also time. So it is affecting across the board the whole entire society. At the very heart of transaction, what we're really talking about commerce. So what I want to do next is carry you guys through the evolution of commerce until today and what will happen in the near future. So, you know, commerce, we've had commerce since very, very long time, started in even in the Middle Ages in Europe when we started trading, right? So we go to the store, we go buy things, and we exchange with monetary system. Then, in the last 10, 20, 30 years, e-commerce popped up. We are able to buy things online, and commerce has been disrupted, predominantly in digital goods, as we know it, right? And then you have the m-commerce, mobile-driven or location-based commerce. And in this particular realm, what has been allowed is those things that have assets like Uber, car owners, or Airbnb, where they have properties where they can start sharing location-driven assets. And then what we're postulating in this future is what we're calling autonomous commerce. And what exactly is autonomous commerce, right? So autonomous commerce is this new, very probable future where the machine economy, and here we're talking about intelligent, autonomous, networked machines, exchange with each other, basically becoming autonomous market participants on their own with very little human intervention. So this is the kind of framework we're building towards this future of autonomous commerce. And so we're foreseeing this future because of what is happening today. So access to more data, more computer power, the advancement in AI, and all of this is leading to potentially adding more value into commerce. Okay. So what are some of the examples that we might be seeing in this autonomous commerce realm, right? We might be able to see, so for example, autonomous vehicle negotiating with another autonomous vehicle in the future where they can bypass traffic with an exchange of a transaction fee. Or maybe in the future, your smart wallet can negotiate with a smart supermarket to give you a discount on perishable goods. So these are some examples that will be happening in probably not so far future. So just as it happened in e-commerce and m-commerce, all of these things will be disrupted. So what might that change look like in this not so far future, right? So we've all seen these robots in fulfillment centers at Amazon, right? So these bots in this not so far future might take over the streets and become merging into delivery bots and create a completely fluid consumption. You no longer need fulfillment centers because things are always being pushed out in the wild, quote unquote. You know, we're seeing cashierless supermarkets where people can go and walk out creating even less friction in their transaction. And these supermarkets, maybe in the future, might not even be contained. The whole entire city could become the supermarket itself. And this is already happening, right? The startups already are working on how to merge all of these different players to create this whole new level of convenience in our consumption behavior. It might even change your home, the spaces that we occupied. So in the future, your refrigerators and your ovens and maybe even your pantries and your closets might be two-sided, where it opens from the inside, you have access to it, and it might open to the outside, where all of these transactions are allowed to received from your Amazon deliveries and your takeouts. So let's talk a little bit what that looked like previously. Let's take the music industry and how that transformed the industry itself, right? So in the regular commerce, you actually go into a store and you buy the record. Then you have e-commerce, and you would go online to a platform, maybe it's iTunes, and you buy a single song. So previously in the record store, you buy the whole entire record. Now in the iTunes, you can buy one singular song. And then now you have Spotify, where it's subscription-based, and you now have access to thousands and millions of songs out there all the time. Well, what's going to happen in the future in autonomous commerce? And this also is already happening. Alexa has deep music, it's AI-generated music that is based on your preferences, right? So let's take that domain. So the music industry, which is predominantly the digital products, have evolved in that way. What does that look like in the food industry, right? So obviously we go to the market and we buy food. And then now we're seeing this surge of online supermarkets where you can buy things and then they will deliver. Great. Well, what's going to come next? What does the Spotify of food looks like in the future? What does the recommendation system of the food looks like in the future? And yet, what is that to come in the autonomous realm? So I want to take a moment and do a little bit of question survey to the crowd. I want to ask about your breakfast this morning. Okay, so if you, please keep your hands up as I'm asking this series of questions, and then we'll kind of take a look at how everyone had answered. Okay, so do you guys know, everyone had breakfast this morning? Yes, raise your hand. Okay, do you guys know how much your breakfast cost this morning? Okay, keep your hands up if you know how much your breakfast cost. Good, okay. Do you understand the nutritional value of the breakfast you had? Was it organic? Was it organic? Does it have pest? Keep your hands up. If you know the answer, just keep your hands up. Okay, about 10 people. Okay, good. Do you guys know where your breakfast came from? Did it travel far? Was it 0-kilometer food? Okay, no one already. More, do you know what the environmental impact of the breakfast we had this morning? What was the CO2 footprint? No one. Okay. Do you know the social implication of that food? Was it from, was it fair trade? No one. Look around. Not a single person's hand is raised. Too much, Bruce talked about decision making. This is our mental budget at max. We do this 3 times a day, 365 days a year. Across the population of 7.7 billion people, we are talking about 8.3 trillion decisions of unknown things that we can't even decide every single year. Now imagine, just for a moment, if every single decision we made about food, things that we put in our body, the healthiest, the best for us, the best for the environment, every single time, and how that will impact not just us, but across the globally. So right now, we're still living in this post-mass production society where we are prioritizing efficiencies and convenience. We need to start incorporating our values, our social goals, our environmental impacts, and alongside economic ones. So transactions need to go beyond convenience, right? So the question I'm asking myself is that, do we have to choose? Do we have to choose convenience over value? Or in this autonomous commerce age, could we actually have both? So in this coming age of autonomous commerce, we're now at this fork road. We can choose to continue our very unsustainable consumer behavior, letting big tech's algorithms to commoditize everything and consolidate their power and continue to push their consumerism on us and breaching privacy at the same time. Or we can choose a more responsible, decentralized, local consumption behavior where we put our values up front and not just economic ones, but the social goods and the ecological importance as well. So to end this, I think moving forward, the only way that we can create more sustainable and responsible consumption is to start beginning this dialogue between ecology and economy. And until then, we're still going to fall back on our back in the old days behavior of capitalism. So I'm inviting all of you guys to have this dialogue with me. I would love to continue this conversation, and thank you for listening.